that there are lots of possibilities, and those possibilities are endless if you see them and you envision them. Because Donnie will hear me often say, the universe talks to you. And all you have to do is listen. Because if you listen, you will find purpose and you will find meaning in everything that you do. Now I'll get off my little soapbox on that note. But it is always exciting to be here with Donnie at the beginning of the year. We have done this how many times now, Donnie? About 3 or 4 times, right?
I thought it was more like a decade.
Almost like a decade. But I have been trading my little musings about what happened the year before for a number of years. I do actually 2 lists. I do one on Black America and the diaspora, if you will, and then I do a separate one on Maryland. It is very interesting to me how the world that we live in is shaped by so many things that happened, not just to us, but around us. This year, I think everybody was probably kind of shocked when a rapper from South Central Los Angeles, Nipsey Hussle, died in a hail of gunfire. And he was not the only one. There were hundreds of individuals across this country who unfortunately didn't just die in a hail of gunfire, but died at the hands of someone else with a weapon in their hand. And I pray for all of their survivors and the people they left behind. In Nipsey Hussle's case, I think it was that seminal moment when, like many of you probably remember when Tupac died, and many of you remember when Biggie died. I think it's one of those kind of seminal moments. It will kind of haunt a generation, if you will. They will talk about, well, I was down with him. And they said the same thing about Biggie, and they said the same thing about Tupac. But I knew that was one of those things that not just people of my generation, because to be quite candid, Nipsey is not of my generation. But he
Had you heard of him prior?
I had heard of one of his songs, but I was not aware of what he was doing in the community. It's one thing. I talked about the possibilities. He was a young man who had known struggle, who had known people who were kind of telling him, no, you can't. And he took that on, and he changed the language, he changed the dynamics, and as they like to say, he was doing good in the hood. Yeah. And I sent a note to Donnie before I came on this show about the young lady who had the hairdressing salon on the east side.
Destiny Harrison.
I am just torn up about this. This young lady had so much promise, and like Nipsey Hussle on the West Coast, and her and our miss. I know people say you gotta stop, and one of my other top Black stories was murder and the pathological nature of it. These are a lot of people with mental illness. And I know we have some lady who's a nurse here with us, or in the health profession. I shouldn't define you as a nurse, but it is. We have too many people, unfortunately, who are facing trauma in our lives. Sometimes it's little trauma, and sometimes it's really big trauma. And unfortunately, the big trauma, leads to things that we don't like. And I hate to tell you, I hate writing about the fact that there are just too many murders in our community. And I think everybody, even people who are listening in the cars, will say, there are just too many murders. I don't know if there's a single answer. There is no silver bullet.
Well, there are some things that have not been done.
I would agree. And those things are I mentioned in my list as well. I talk about it's tough being a Black cop. And a lot of people will say, well, Charles, where are you going with that one? Why I say that is because, unfortunately, those people who are Black and in law enforcement face dual challenges. First of all, they face that unique challenge that those in the majority community don't know if they're sincere about what they're doing. Those in the African American community and others wonder not, are they administering justice fairly? And then there are those outliers. And I talked about the outliers. I talked about the Chicago police chief who said that, you know, he wasn't drunk sitting in a car. And then he lied to the mayor. Well, you got to fire the guy. I'm sorry. There was I talked about the Fort Worth police chief who was supposed to be the police chief here. There was a shooting. You guys may not remember this, but there was a woman who was sitting in her home in Fort Worth, and police were told that someone was breaking in. They went through her window and they shot her in her living room. And he was like, well, they did a good job. I'm sorry, no, that's not a good job. You can easily say, well, we are going to get to the bottom of this. But he ended up getting removed. And then, of course, the gun trace task force. When cops become criminals, they are the worst kind of criminals. Those are people who, they were setting up people. They was like, we got to get some more money. Had two of them was sitting on a beach in the Dominican Republic collecting overtime. In the infamous words of Elijah Cumming, we can do better. We can do better. But I'm on my little soapbox. Donnie, first of all, I know you had your own list, so.
Well, I just would have, a couple of addendums. Detective Sean Suiter, the switcheroo.
Oh, yeah. As always. And you and I have talked about when it was happening. For those of you who don't remember, Suiter was allegedly going to interview a person about a murder.
The day before he was to testify in
a federal
trace.
grand jury. And the question was he set up? I don't know, but I'm going to tell you what happened to that community. And Donnie, you remember because you were there. Police cordoned off the area. You couldn't drive in there unless you had an ID that said that you lived there. Or if you were going there, people were checking IDs.
Abusively.
Abusively
such that the ACLU
sued them.
Well, here's an interesting caveat. They have, to my knowledge, 4 families. It only includes 4 families. That's an entire neighborhood. And so what I'm saying is the ACLU doesn't get a free pass.
Right. But here's
I'm always leery of liberal white people attempting to speak for me.
I would agree.
I don't know you, Slim.
Right.
You coming over here being chummy chum. I don't know you like that.
Right.
Who are you? What do you stand for?
I think that the thing that always kind of, if you will, makes you think that, the world is going into a hell in a handbasket, and then the beauty of the world exists.
Oh, you have some positive for us?
Oh, man, I do.
Does it include Dave Chappelle?
No.
Sticks and Stones? I thought that was, you always pushing plays on me, but I thought Chappelle, Sticks and Stones
it was interesting.
Was brilliant and obviously legally sound.
Well, I appreciate that, as I've always said.
Because you remember Roland Martin started talking smack, and next thing you know, he was off the air.
Well, I want to tell you about something that I thought was very amazing. First of all, there were 5 black women who were named Miss Universe, Miss USA, Miss World. And that was kind of like, that came out of left field. I didn't see that coming, because I think a lot of times what one thinks of beauty isn't always what I think is the idealized version of it. I thought the woman who won Miss Universe from South Africa was probably, I saw her in an interview with Trevor Noah, And Trevor asked her, he says, "You were the first woman that I knew who had short hair and was a beauty queen." Now think about that. You know, first of all, black women got issues with hair anyway. And look, and one of the ladies is laughing, but no, that is true. Would y'all agree? Am I missing something?
No.
No, ladies have a lot of issues with hair. There are those who will say, you know, I bought it, I own it. There are some people who will say, you know, how I decide to choose and where I want to wear my hair is how I want it. But the fact that she was comfortable in her own skin, that to me
was refreshing.
It was not only refreshing, you know,
A black woman that looked like a black woman.
Yes,
We tired of seeing white black girls.
Well,
I said it.
I am reminded also there is a short that's out there from a former NFL player. It's called what is it called? Hair Love. If you get a chance, go on YouTube and watch it. It's called Hair Love, and I'll just give it to you in real simple. It's about a little girl who wants to get her hair done, but unfortunately, her mother's not around, and so she has her little iPad or whatever device, and she says, "This is what I want my hair to look like." So she tries to do it, and she's having no luck. So her dad walks in, who has dreadlocks, and he's like going, "Uh-oh, what am I going to do?" He ends up actually helping her do her hair, and what we find out is that her mother was suffering from cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I hope it wins I hope I think it's going to get nominated for an Oscar. I hope it is one of the most, like I said, there aren't just the bad things that happen in the world. There are the great things that happen in the world.
Touching on Africa.
Africa is in a unique place in that, so they got rid of the president of Sudan. That's one African country, and there is now a coalition government that is trying to do well. Boko Haram, who I've written about for years, continues to have an undue influence in and around both Nigeria, Kenya, and others. They have.
Who are they? What is their purpose?
Boko Haram is it's like El Shabaab in Somalia, which is
Do they kill white people or do they just kill black people?
They kill everybody. They don't
discriminate.
They're indiscriminate.
Because like in this country, and you have it in Africa too, we are very good at killing each other.
Right.
It's like the time I got robbed over there on Bentlow Street. Guy tried to take my chain. It was 1985. I'll never forget it. A damn chain. Pull out a gun and all of that. I would see him not long later down Gilmore Homes, and I was like, why don't you go out housing somewhere? Why are you robbing your own people?
Right. Yeah, well, and
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
We have the heart to hurt each other, but a Klansman, a racist, they just have their way with us. So my thought is, you're a coward. If you want to fight, why don't you fight your enemy?
I would call him something else, but I don't think I can say that on the radio.
Okay.
But the last thing I want to talk about is a person who's dear to your heart, Donnie, and I think to everybody in here, and there's Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman got the star treatment this year. I want y'all to think about that for a minute.
She got the star treatment from white America.
No, she got the star treatment from a lot of different places that didn't know who she was.
They need to do their research because she's always been a star in our community.
She always has been. But when I say the star treatment, I mean that people were actually talking about Harriet Tubman.
True.
And they hadn't been before, but they were actually like having conversations about, did she really pull that gun out on somebody?
Yes, she did.
Yes, she did.
Now, this was not the first movie on her.
This is not the first movie. And when I talk about the star treatment, I went down to I went down to the Blackwater Reserve where the Underground Railroad Museum is on the Eastern Shore. And if you haven't, you should go see it. It is. I mean, it'll give you a lot. And then of course the mural that's in Cambridge. Go see that as well. On February the 10th, which is a Monday, where I work in Annapolis, the State House, they are going to dedicate two statues there, one to Harriet Tubman and one to Frederick Douglass. And let me just
Did they have black artists do the sculptures?
No.
See, now let me tell you something. The mural, this Harriet Tubman movie that used a white expert, we don't need white experts on our own community. I'm sick of it. Go tell your own story. Stop being a culture vulture, because we're very capable of telling our own story about our own heroes. And what sickens me is when I go down to the Eastern Shore and I see these African Americans giving these white people carte blanche on Black history, not on this.
Okay, now let me get to a different part of that story. First of all, the Harriet Tubman Museum is run by Black folks.
I'm clear.
Okay, just so that everybody understands that.
As it should be.
There is
Jews wouldn't have you running their Jewish center.
So the other part of that is there is a what's the name? A tour group that actually does Black tours, and I profiled them as a part of a story about the mural. So, but February 10th.
Like we ain't got black muralers. All in Sandtown after Freddie Gray, when I'm seeing Iranians, they put a mural on Pennsylvania in gold.
I appreciate
And it talk about immigrants. I wasn't no damn immigrant.
I'm just reminding everybody.
You started it.
I'm just reminding everybody. You're talking about Harriet Tubman, a conversation that wasn't being talked
I don't
about.
need nobody else's validity about our heroes. I don't need it.
Donnie,
They ain't giving
I
it. They will
appreciate
never
that-
accept us,
that-
Charles.
I
They don't
appreciate-
accept themselves.
I appreciate that, but I want to remind you there is a little kid who is sitting in a classroom in Garrett County, down in Easton or up in Cecil County, who is being asked to write a report. And I'm hoping that someone said, why don't you write about Harriet Tubman?
Okay. It all starts at home, right?